Well, hello and welcome to the Permaculture Education Institute's design tutorial. And this month is one of those special design tutorials. Our design tutorial is with Gavin Hardy. Now, Gavin Hardy and I have been working together for well longer than I wish to admit, several decades. So Gavin is the Adult Education Coordinator at Northeast Street City Farm, a project that he and I were involved in starting up back in the day. He's also the Queensland Community Gardens Network Coordinator, a Churchill Fellow who recently went to Government House and had a lovely chat. We were just talking before with the Governor about community composting systems and all things foodie. And his Churchill Fellowship was all around community food forests. And I think I've shared before, but I will share again the link to Gav's Churchill Fellowship, where you can read all about community food forests. He's also a landscape architect, a wonderful friend of mine, and a long-time collaborator. I'm really happy to welcome him here to this session. I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and with the Jinnabara to my east, and would like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and would love to invite you to drop in the chat, open up the chat, drop in the chat and let Gav know where you're calling in from, and let each other know where you're calling in from too. This session is a design tutorial. Now, it's a little bit longer than usual because Gav has a whole lot of things to share. And this is something that I have heard you ask me about a lot. And I've noticed in all the submissions, people say, I'd really like to, I feel a little bit like I don't have enough drafting skills or drawing skills. Can I, how can I get better at this? And so this is our response. Gav has also run 2 sessions with us previously, and I will make sure that when I send you out the recording for this tomorrow, that I'll drop in the links directly to the previous ones in case you missed them or you'd like to watch them, do a binge watch and watch part 1, 2 and 3 all together and have a big drawing day over the weekend or something. Oh my gosh, there's lots of people coming in. I'm just sorry to get a bit distracted. This is a great response to this, Gav, isn't it? So I'm really happy that this is on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be here in the background. I'm going to be checking any questions and chat and things and helping Gav behind the scenes. But right now, I'm going to hand the baton across to you, Gav. Welcome and thank you for being here. And thank you, all of you, for being present as well.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Morag. Hey, those of you who've got your camera turned off, can you turn it on? Because it's just, I just think, in this online space, it's good to be able to see your faces. If we were in the real world, I'd be able to see your face. So it'd be nice if you could turn your camera on as well. That'd be a good thing to do. Yeah, welcome to this third in the series of drawing and drafting workshops that I'm doing at Morag. So this third one is more about drafting as opposed to drawing. So drafting's really about how you actually construct drawings, how you actually put drawings together to communicate your designs with your client. Okay. So that's what this little session's about. The previous 2 sessions are about sort of loosening up and becoming a bit more confident with your drawing skills. Sort of graphic designs and concept bubble diagrams and how do you draw trees and all that sort of thing. How do you switch on the right side of your brain and become more creative in your drawing ability. I guess this workshop tonight is more the technical end of the drawing, the drawing exercise, okay? How we actually put together a set of drawings. So before I really get into it, I just wanted to acknowledge where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place known as Karilpa, which is in the city of Brisbane in Australia, on unceded Yuggera and Turrbal land. here in Queensland. And I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging from wherever we're coming from, wherever First Nations people where you are and where I am. I just want to acknowledge that. So I've got a question for you guys to start off with. Hopefully, Morag, you've pulled this off in the 10 minutes before we started this workshop. So my question for you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how experienced are you at drawing skills? With 10 being, I'm very experienced, and 1 being, I have no experience. So let's just have a look of...
Gav, I should have written drafting skills there, perhaps, maybe, instead of
drawing skills would be good to know, just general drawing skills. Okay. Yeah. All right. Can everybody see the poll? Can we all see the poll? Yeah. Okay, so we've got a broad range, haven't we? So from 0 to 7, we're getting scores coming in out of 23 people. So that's really good. That's great. It gives me a bit of an idea of where you're at. Thanks for that. I'm going to end the poll now, and then I'm going to share screen. Let's have a look. So this is what we're on about today. My aim is to provide guidance in how to create base plans and how to work up a design using hand drawing techniques. So I'm not guys, I'm not getting into the digital world of drafting, AutoCAD, Inkscape, InDesign, Photoshop. We could run a whole series of workshops on that stuff if you want to get into that stuff. But it's good to know how to, even if you just want to concentrate on the digital world of drafting, it is also useful to know how to draw up plans by hand. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about deciding what graphic products you actually need to prepare, whether you actually need to prepare them at all. The site inventory. So before you even start drawing up a plan, what's the sort of information you need to get from site to draw up that plan? And then creating the base plan and communicating your design. Okay, and I'm allowing plenty of time for questions. So feel free to ask questions as we go or at the end of each little section. So how does that sound? Are people cool with that? Does that sound good? Has anyone got a burning thing in drafting that they would like to get into tonight? Perhaps if you could put that in the chat. Let's have a look. I'm looking at the chat now. And perhaps Morag, if you can note down if there's anything there that people want to do. All right, so deciding what graphic products you need to prepare. I'm just going to stop there. So first of all, the world of drafting can be very time consuming, okay? It can take up a lot of your time and a lot of your client's budget drawing up lots of plans, lots of graphic information that they might not actually use that much. And so as permaculture designers, and I assume you're here on Morag's course because you want to do a bit of consultation, not just work on your own stuff, but work for other people as well. It's really important to get a handle on, well, how much graphic work do I need to do? Okay. You can go down some very deep rabbit holes with this stuff. And is it worth it or not? It might not be, actually, depending on what sort of work you're doing. I do a lot of work in the urban space. Okay, I don't do any work in the rural countryside at all. So when I work with clients, a lot of my work is verbal. You know, we just have a chat, we go to a backyard or their place, we have a good conversation. And I might do something like draw up a mud map. So I'll just share my screen again. And I put on my second camera. Okay, so, you know, I might go to a client's place, and the only graphic thing that I'll do for them is draw up a little mud map. Can you guys see that? It seems a little bit blurred in my, but is that coming out okay, Morag?
It does look a bit blurred. Can you focus or?
Yeah, not sure if I can. I'm using a smartphone as my overhead camera, so
Yeah,
um,
it should.
but I think you can get the gist there. Like
Yeah.
you can just see they're basic bubble diagrams. It's a very simple sort of thing. It's got a little title in the corner there with a funny little north point in there. And I've actually drawn it up to a little bit of scale, but a mud map doesn't necessarily need to be to scale. And we've drawn this up over the kitchen table at the client's place. Okay, it's a very simple graphic. This is the same client, and we're just nominating different spaces. Okay, for different activities and different uses and functions. How you might move through the site. So you know those arrows, sort of showing access. And if you've done some of my if you've done my previous landscape graphics workshop, we got into the sort of bubble diagrams and using arrows and those sorts of graphics to indicate access. So you know that might be all that's required from just to get the message across to your client, just to help them start to think about how to organise their space. Okay, here's another one. Very, very quick kitchen table stuff. This one's not even to scale, okay? But it's just starting to give people a little bit of an idea of how they could organise that space, all right? What else have we got here? So that's the mud map. You know, the mud map is sort of the first piece of graphic design that you might, and probably the easiest in terms of drafting something up for a client to use. And, you know, you take a photograph of it, send it to them, take a scan of it, you know, take the whole thing home with you, then scan it and send it to them. That might be all that's required, you know, and that gives them a start. That's the mud map. I'm going to talk a little bit about the content of this amazing book. Okay, so not sure if there's any landscape architects in the room. Probably not from what you are answering in the straw poll, but this is sort of one of the landscape architects' Bibles, this book. You know, first year landscape architects. Not sure if they still do it these days, but when I went through landscape architecture 25 years ago, this was the book for learning how to do landscape graphics. And it's still in print. I really recommend, if you're going to get into this stuff, to have a look at Grant Reed's book. So I'm just going to flick through this a little bit. let's talk about the different types of plans drafting that you might get into. Now, this is for this is landscape architects, but it equally applies to permaculturalists who are doing work. So this is a site analysis plan. Using the bubble diagram. I'm sorry you can't probably read the text, but again, it's very loose drawing. It's just a site analysis. That diagram there's far more detailed. It's a very detailed plan across a whole landscape, very big scale drawing. I think I did a lot of this in the landscape graphics component. But I just wanted to flick through different types of plans. So like a master plan, very, very detailed work. You guys probably won't get into master planning so much unless you start working on very big sort of eco village projects and that sort of thing. These days, if you're working at that scale, you'll probably be working with a graphic designer or something like that. You probably won't need to get into that sort of stuff. Well, you might get into construction plans as well. So these are like grading plans, this one here, or a planting plan. That's the sort of thing you might have to get into. So the different types of graphics, very detailed construction drawings, that sort of thing. Perhaps the next level up from a mud map I was showing before is just a bit more of resolved plans. So again, this is a fairly quick little plan I've done for a client, but it's not as loose. I've used a ruler in this example here to draw up paths and that sort of thing, and it's drawn to scale. So the scale is 1:50 in this case. And I've used annotations. I've used these arrows to indicate, and with text to indicate different functions and different things going on in that little garden in there. So that's sort of next level of drafting. If I share my screen, yes, thank you. See some thumbs up there. So this is sort of perhaps the next level of drafting. So this is a very detailed little drawing of a community kitchen in a community garden, and it's been drawn using tracing paper to do the graphic work, and I've done hand lettering with annotation arrows, and I've scanned that image and I've put it into a Word document. Okay. So you don't need fancy graphics packages to put this stuff together. So that title block you see at the bottom at the drawing there, that's been done in Microsoft Word. Okay. So don't get too it looks okay. It's not it wouldn't be accepted as in a professional sort of office, architects, big consultancies, that sort of stuff. But for the work we do, if we're just trying to convey an idea, and your client might want to take that information and share it amongst their group and share it around, that style of graphic is probably okay, and it's cost effective too. I mean, you're not going to muck around for too long putting that together. Okay. Okay, Morag, I'm going to try and share another one and see if you can actually see it. So let's I'm going to cancel that. Hopefully you can see that. Good. So this is the one I was talking about before. This is a base plan of the Belbunya community up north of Brisbane, near where Morag lives, actually, Yamundi, Kenilworth, that sort of area. And this base plan has been drawn big scale, as you can see. You know, it's probably 1 kilometre across or something like that, maybe half a kilometre across. It's been drawn by tracing an aerial plan, okay, an aerial photo. Okay, so if you're working at that scale, getting hold of an air photo is very helpful.
Maybe you could just say a little bit about where you get them, because that's often a question that I get as well.
Yeah.
So where do you source your aerial photographs and contour information most easily?
Yes, I'm going to get to that. Yes, we're going to drill into where do you get all this stuff? Okay, but I just wanted to show you, you know, the different possibilities of drafting. So again, another very simple concept plan for a little community garden. And again, I've drawn that up on tracing paper. I've scanned the tracing paper and I've put it into a Word document, and we're actually in Microsoft Word right now. So I just wanted to show you how I put that together. So that's actually, I think I can move that image. Maybe it's locked. Yeah, so I've scanned an image. I've inserted it into Microsoft Word, you know, going up into insert pictures, brought it into Microsoft Word. I've set up my page as an A3 size page. And I've got, look at that, it's actually masking over the top of the title block. So I just need to set that back if I can. Oh, and now I've lost it all. So there you go. It's playing around with me a little bit there. Yeah, but then the title block itself is just created through Microsoft Word. So very easy. I can actually edit all that. They're in text boxes and that sort of thing. So if you can learn that sort of stuff with Word, then you can actually create a drawing quite simply. Okay, so is there any questions so far around what I've just been showing you? Do you reckon you could pull something off like that? Tracing paper, create a little title block in Microsoft Word, pretty easy, that sort of thing. Later tonight, we'll get into creating a title block, all right?
So there's a question there, Gav, around, so Lavina and Chloe asked earlier too about, do we get faster with practice? It takes us ages to draw by hand, was their first question way up. And just then they were saying, what about editing drawings if you want to edit your hand drawings?
Yeah.
I just do iterations.
Yes.
I just go over it again with another piece of tracing paper and keep the bits that I want and change the bits that I don't. I mean, it all depends on whether you're getting so fancy and colourful with them or not.
Yeah. So Lavina and Chloe and everyone else, you do get faster, but you got to keep on with it. Okay. And you know, I really encourage people just to keep a journal and do some drawings and doodling and that sort of stuff, and just get really confident with using pens and pencils and paper and all that sort of thing. And then, editing. So, you know, the drawings I showed you were the final thing for the client, okay? I'm going to show you just how you work up a design using simple butter paper, okay? So just keep on playing with designs and that sort of thing. One of the drawbacks of hand drawings, and even the final design, so the client might come back and want to make a whole lot of changes. So what do? I've only got this hand drawn thing. What am I going to do about it? So you have a master copy basically that you can continue to change. We have in the world of digital graphic design, we have masters. In the analog world, we also have masters. Okay, so that's the one that we continue to base all our other final plans on, and we can continue to alter and change them. Wouldn't believe how much liquid paper I've used over the years to, back in the days. These days I mainly do graphics in the digital world. But for you guys, yeah, amazing what you can do with liquid paper, or just getting a piece of paper out that's neatly cut, and then sticking that down over the bit that you don't want to see anymore, and away you go. It doesn't. It's not terribly difficult to do. Okay.
There's a couple of questions, Gav, in the
Yeah.
chat, and then we'll go to you, Denise. Vincent was asking, I wonder whether north always needs to be at the top of the page. Generally, I do. Do you also, Gav?
Yeah. So the drawing convention all around the world, I think it'll be the same for you guys in Northern Hemisphere. I was thinking about this the other day. In the Northern Hemisphere, they do the plans still need to point north. Okay, so the drawing convention is that north is up the page, and that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be vertical up the page. It can also, as long as it's not pointing down. Okay, so it can point to the right, you can point to the left, but don't let it point down. That's a big no-no in drafting the drawing convention.
Confuses people. Yeah.
It can confuse people.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a question, I'm not sure, Dee, whether I understand it properly. It says, are the compass directions used and the outer boundaries of the land considered too? I'm not sure whether you understand that, Gav, or whether you need more details.
A bit of clarity.
Yeah, all right.
Madeline.
So if you could add some extra on that. Melinda said, is A3 paper the best option, or is A4 okay?
Yeah, A3. Melinda, yeah. Unless you're doing really big scale stuff, massive landscape stuff, you want to go to A1. Okay, A1's tricky because you need to start needing more infrastructure to draw with A1. Gets tricky on a kitchen table.
Yeah.
So
Amy, sorry, Gab. Amy said in the Northern Hemisphere, it's best to have a southern aspect to face the sun. Yeah. So, but in terms of the plan, you still have the North Point facing up, so that it's a global convention.
I believe it's a global convention. Yeah, it's a little bit confusing for people in the Northern Hemisphere, isn't it? Because the sun's at the equator, which is south, but just the drawing convention, I think, is still north. Yeah.
And then Denise, where are you? I think she must have just dropped out. She had her hand up. We'll come back to her.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But yeah, they're great questions. Yeah, keep them coming. Because I'm not quite sure where you guys are at and where you're stuck. Because there's a few points on this journey where you can get quite stuck. How do I actually construct, put these drawings together?
Oh, here's Denise. Hang on a tick. Let's see if she can jump straight in and ask a question before you move on.
Yeah. Well, Lavina and Chloe, yeah, you can set your Word document to A3.
All right, Denise, do you want to unmute your mic and jump in and ask?
G'day. Sorry about that. I was just having technical problems.
Yeah.
Just had to restart my computer. I was just trying to wrap my head around the practicalities, and I've being a complete novice with that. I've been been a bit overwhelming, and I'm trying to I guess break it up into steps. So the Google Maps I found really helpful. So I'm just wondering if that process, like especially doing things to scale, like using Google Maps and then doing the tracing from a blowing up of Google Maps, and then doing what you're suggesting now sounds really sensible. Then inserting that into a Word document, and a combination of that with the mud maps as well.
Okay. So you want to know how to take that information from Google Maps?
Yeah, definitely. Especially the scaling. I'm sort of new to that, like wrapping my head around how to do things to scale.
Yeah, great.
Can I just insert in here before you go ahead and explain, Gav, that one thing that I recommend everyone to do is to always draw their scale as a bar scale. I noticed you've just been doing 1 to 50 and stuff, because on digital format, when people are sending things in, it can be like, it just spreads so much, and 1 to 50 doesn't mean anything anymore when it's that big. So I do always encourage people to draw their scale. So it doesn't matter how big the size it's ended up on your screen or print it out, you can always measure it off easily.
Yeah, exactly. So bar scales are good, but make sure they're a standard. So guys, I don't want to see a bar scale that actually equates to 1:387 or 423. No, it needs to be the standard scales. And the reason for that is because we use scale rulers to measure things off. Okay, and you don't get a scale ruler at 1:387. You get a scale ruler at typically 1:50, 1:100, 1:200, 1:125, 1:250, 1:500. So that's sort of the reason why there's a standard with scale. I'll see if I can find what Mr. Reed has to say about that. Let's have a look. Yes, there's a whole lot of scales and scale bars in here. Okay, very rarely will you be drawing anything at 1:25. Like that's sort of like an architect's drawing a room. Okay, but you might get to 1:50, like a small garden. Okay, so 1:50 is probably the smallest scale that you will draw. But you'll typically be drawing on an A3 plan for a backyard, 1:100, or if it's big backyard, 1:200. Be something like that. If you're on a rural property, you start getting into 1:500, 1:1,000, maybe even a really big property, 1:2,000. Do people need a bit of an explanation about what scale is? Is that something that people get? Oh,
I think a lot of people get stuck on that. It might be helpful. There's also a question in the chat saying, I've got a scale rule, but notice there's more than one to choose from. Do I need all versions? And so that's like different sort of rulers, but also just the scale 101 might maybe just like put your hand up. Oh, hang on, we can't see everyone. Drop in the chat if that's a yes. If you just need that.
A bit of scale.
Do you need just a 101 on scale? Just a quick 101. Yes, 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 please.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. All right, let's have a look at my little.
And maybe a demo, says Lavina and Chloe.
A demo, yeah. So like in the real world, we've got.
Oh, and sorry, Gav, just before you keep going, and Amy said, can you also explain the scale ruler?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got a tree, okay. In the real world, that tree might have so this is a plan view of a tree, okay. That's the canopy, and this is my little symbol for the branches. All right, in the real world, that tree canopy, let's say it's a really massive tree and it's got a 10-meter radius, okay. It's got a 10-meter radius. Well, how are you going to put that on an A3 plan? You obviously can't draw it at the scale of 1:1 because 10 meters is too big to fit on your A3 plan. So you need scale to shrink it down so it all fits in an A3 plan. So I'm going to show you a method for how you work out what the scale should be for your paper size. So that's why we have a scale ruler. And so, for so you want to draw a scale of 1:100. Okay. So let me see if I can get my mind around this. So 10 meters is how many centimeters, guys? I'll let you work it out. How many centimeters is 10 meters? How many centimeters is 1 meter? Centimeters.
100.
It's 100. So how many is 10 meters?
1,000.
1,000. It's 1,000 centimeters. Okay. So if I want to draw at a scale of 1:100, and my thing is 1,000 centimeters, I'd simply divide the 100 into the 1,000 to to work out how big I need to draw it across, okay? So 100 into 1,000 is 10. So at a scale of 1 is to 100, it's a big tree that I'm drawing on my plan, and then I pull out my ruler and I look for the correct scale. So the correct scale, you probably can't quite see it, but here it says 1 is to 100 right at the end. Okay. Are you following me so far? I can see Denise nodding her head. I can see Lizzie going, what the hell's he, maybe, not sure. So 10 centimetre is what I need to draw my tree at a scale of 1 is to 100. So I would be drawing my tree from there to there, which is 10 centimetres, and that would be my 1 is to 100 tree. Okay, that's how scale works. All right, so what we're trying to do is fit our model of our property or our site onto a plan of a certain size. I'm going to show you how to do that in a bit. Okay, does that clear up a little bit of scale for people?
I think it's also a good idea to practice.
Yeah, we will practice. Okay, I'm going to give you an exercise to do in a bit.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Very good. I'm just going to jump out of that now. I know we're sort of jumping all over the place at the moment, guys, but I just wanted to sort of start to gauge where you're at. Oh, that's good. Yes, great pickup, Daff. Yes, you're right, mate. So put in a radius of 10, have a diameter of 20. Sorry, you're absolutely right. So you've picked me up there. So actually that tree would be twice as big. That's the way I drew it. Okay, because I have a diameter of 20. Anyway, don't get too caught up and stuck with that. But hey, Daff, you're onto it, mate. Good on you. Before we get into all that stuff, I wanted to just go into a little bit about the site inventory, what you actually need to pick up from site in order to create your base plan and create your final design. So again, let me just share a bit of screen with you. I'll be into this sort of site inventory. So what I want to just go through quickly is sort of the sort of checklist that you'll need when you go out to site, what sort of things you need to pick up, all right? And a little kit, what's the sort of little kit you need to take with you to do all this work? How do you get the property boundary or the cadastre information? Where do you get that from? Like how do you know where where can I get a plan of the property boundaries? That's really essential information. If you're going to draw up a site, you need to know the property boundaries, don't you? Trilateration and triangulation, how you actually measure up a site. Let's do a quick little bit on that. I'm going to show you a video on that. And then coming to what Denise was talking about, okay, aerial photography, Google Maps, Neomaps, GIS tools, Queensland Globe, Google Earth Pro, how you can generate scale plans. I'll touch on a little bit on some of the solar tracking apps. Okay, I'm not sure if we need to do that tonight, but we'll see. And when do I need to employ a professional surveyor to do this work? Okay, there's some instances where I really recommend you get a professional surveyor come in, all right? Okay, jump out of that. Stop share. Before I jump into that, one thing to keep in mind, if you're working on big rural properties, if your focus for your permaculture design work is in the countryside, where you're probably going to be working at larger scales than what I typically work at, you can get mapping information by employing someone who does drone survey work. Okay, they fly a drone over the property, and it takes a whole lot of readings and does a survey that way. It seems to work much better in rural properties than it does in the urban landscape for some reason. So that might be something that you might want to explore. You can drop me a line perhaps after this workshop, and we can explore how you can find out a bit more about using drone surveying. You actually get a consultant in to do that work. Okay, site design checklist. Let's have a look at that. Right. So this is the sort of thing you'll need just to get into this work. So the first stuff is the first part of this checklist is just the user checklist. I'm not going to dwell on that at all, because sort of the intention here is to look at the site checklist. Okay. So this particular site checklist is one that we use in a permaculture design course at Northey Street City Farm, but you can use it in your professional work. It's no different to what a professional person would use. We've arranged it according to the scale of permanence list that Dave Jackie created based on P.A. Yeoman's work. But we've also included some things that are really important to check off on. So First Nations stuff, checking in with First Nations people, local people to connect with and seek advice from in important local places. This is quite an extensive checklist, guys. I should have said in the first instance. So it goes on for a long, long time. But it's based on the themes that you probably would have covered in Morag's course.
Yeah, for anyone panicking, don't worry. In the site analysis section of the course, all of these things are listed in there. So don't panic.
So I'm not going to go right into every single aspect of this. I'm going to touch on a few important things that you need to know. How do you find the information? Okay, so all that climate information usually available through your particular country's Bureau of Meteorology. You can find all that information. Slope and aspect, that's something you'll no doubt Morag will cover. What I really wanted to get into, there's the water stuff, there's the laws and regulations. So go back up a bit. When you're getting into this, into your design work, you want to know a lot about the laws and regulations of the land on which you're operating on. And you'll need to know about things like the property boundaries, okay, which I'll get into in a bit more time. Vegetation, you're often mapping that through your aerial photography, but also through ground truthing, on the ground, actually looking at what vegetation's actually there. And then this stuff here, buildings and structures and utilities and infrastructure, okay. Where can I get a lot of that information from? So, on some of my projects, I need to actually measure up the buildings using a method called trilateration. Sometimes triangulation, but usually trilateration, which we'll get into in a bit. But if I can, I try and get that information from the client. So your client might actually have old plans of the property, okay, which has got the buildings on it already. That stuff is gold, okay. If you can get hold of existing site plans, then that's going to really add important layer that's relatively easy to get the information from to making your base plan. So always ask your client if they've got existing information about the site. Okay. The other thing here is utilities and infrastructure. So how do you know if there's underground services going through the property? This is a really big thing in the urban landscape. It's not so much an issue in the rural landscape, but in the urban landscape, how do you actually know from a design point of view, from a safety point of view too, you know? You don't want to have your guys working on site who are digging through underground electricity line or a water pipe, okay? So can anyone answer that? How would you actually find out that information? In Australia, how would you find out that information? Anyone else have a go at that?
Megan said, call before you dig.
That's it. Yeah, so there's a really great website called Call Before You Dig, or it used to be called Dial Before You Dig. If you Google that, have a look at that website. I think you have to register for it. Any address in Australia, you can actually type in that information. You'll get a whole lot of good information about what the underground and even above ground services are in and around that property. Okay. So it's a really important step in the process to do. Okay, finding out where the gas line is, where the overhead and underground electricity could be, where your fibre optics and your telcos lines are, and sewage and water, stormwater, that sort of thing. Okay, that's really important information to find. Right. So I just wanted to pull up this checklist, show you all the different aspects you need to be covering. But I really did want to drill into that utilities and buildings part of it. Okay. I'll show an example. Let's have a look. Not sure if, can you guys see this plan coming up right now? No.
No.
All right. Let me pull out, come back.
Just while you're doing that, I'm dropping in the Dial Before You Dig links into the chat. There's one there for Australia, there's one there for New Zealand, there's one there for the UK. Is there any other countries that we wanted to have a look at?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about Africa, Southeast Asia, whether that digital information is available. So here's an example here, guys, of a cadastre plan. This is a really old plan for a property that I worked on. See if I can pull that across. I can't. If I try and zoom in. So these are different properties on a certain street, on Boundary Street, as you can see. And all of the dimensions here are in feet. So if you're an American, you'll be familiar with this. If you live in the archaic world of the United States of America and you haven't got up to speed with metric yet, you'll be familiar with this. Bit of a joke there. But you'll see there's some dimensions. You'll see, for example, there's 75 at the bottom of the screen there, 75 feet. Okay, you'll see 188 feet. That's the size of that property. Okay, so back in the days in the 1880s when this part of Brisbane was developed, the surveyors created cadastre plans or property boundary plans so that people actually knew exactly what they owned. And so we can use that information to actually to form the basis of our base plan. You need to make the conversion, converting feet to meters if you live in the metric world. You can also see some other numbers here. There's 47. Okay, actually you can see that number 47 keeps on repeating through there. That's the angle that's the bearing of that line, that property line through there. It's an angle of 47 degrees. You'll see up the top of screen here, 140 degrees and 28 minutes. It's another bearing of that line running through there. So you can actually use this information to start plotting it on your plan. Okay, it's really, really important information to get. Okay, that's one source of information. So here's a plan that a client actually gave me of their residence. Yeah, there it is there. So that sort of property information is really handy. Okay, it means I don't have to go and measure up the whole site, including the whole property and where it is in relation to the boundary and all that sort of thing. You can actually use that as your base plan. Okay, all you need to do is trace it. Okay, if you can get that sort of information, it'll save you a lot of work. And so you'll see, I'll keep going in that direction. You'll see there's the architect who drew it up back in the day. You'll see the drawing has a scale. It's at the bottom of the screen there, or in the title block, has a scale. Okay. So if you can get the original drawing, then you're home and hosed. You've got a scale you can work with. You can start transferring that information onto your plan. All right. Okay. Any questions as we're going through there? Just looking at the chat now. Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. So next thing is how you actually measure up your site. So going to share my camera again. So when you're measuring up a site, so say if you've got a site with a whole lot of different things on it, it's got trees and it's got buildings, and you don't have the luxury of a client giving you an existing plan. You've got to start from scratch. And let's say, for argument's sake, you know where the property boundaries are, and say I'm drawing up the property boundaries right now. Okay. Okay, and the property has known points. Okay, which you're either going to get from a cadastre plan, or maybe you're going to get it from an aerial plan with the property boundaries overlaid on it, which I'm going to show you in a bit. So just for argument's sake, say what I've drawn in that square is the property boundary for your site, and it's got a tree in it. Okay, how do you know where that tree is in relation to the property boundaries? Well, if these are known points, okay, and if these are known lengths, then we can use a method called trilateration. Okay, you might have heard of a technique called triangulation. Triangulation is where you use angles to work out where things are. But in this technique, it's called trilateration. It's a far easier technique for most people to use. So if you get a tape measure out when you're on site, and you measure up from that known point, the corner of the property, to the tree trunk, and from that known point, at that corner of the property, to the tree trunk, then we have 3 known lengths. We have the length of the property boundary. Not going to get into algebra. I'm going to give it some real numbers. Say that's 30 meters. All right. And then we might have this length here and say that's 10 meters, and that's 25 meters. Well, we can take that information and plot it on a plan. That's triangulation. Okay. That's a very simple example. And we can do that for all the trees and all the features that are all over our property if we need to. Okay. We can triangulate every feature on our property, or trilaterate, not triangulate. Okay, so surveyors will use triangulation if they've got an instrument that will help them to do it. The way GPS works, fun fact, is through trilateration. Okay, the global positioning system. When you're driving your car, where are you in the world? And the satellites are up there. They're trilaterating where you are. So does that make sense to people? Let me just stop sharing. Yeah, that's right. So triangulation is using angles. That's right, Morag. So yeah, you can set up 2 datums as well. Yeah, that's not a bad way to do it either. But the way I teach it is just trilateration. Okay. That's sort of the technique. So have a go at that at home. Very soon, just something that you know, either the property boundary or your corner of your house or something like that to a tree. Just measure it up and see if you can plot it on a plan. That's trilateration.
Gav, do you just want to just do like one quick summary go of that, just to make sure that everyone's got it? Because in terms of mapping out stuff on your site, I think this is also a question. So just a quick summary run through again.
Yeah, sure. That's
So people got, I think, where you drew the lines, but then how do you work out your measurements based on that? I think that's
okay.
Maybe a bit that would be good to explain again.
All right. All right. So we understood we've got known lines. They're called property boundaries. Okay. There they are there. And I've got features within my site that I want to measure, and I want to know fairly accurately where they're located. And I've got known points on the property boundaries. So from those known points, I can take measurements. That's really what we're doing here, from known points to unknown points. Okay. So that's my property boundary. And that's my property boundary. Okay, and I just get my tape measure out. Really helps if you've got 2 people to do this. Okay, it's very hard to do this by yourself. I'm just taking a measurement from there to there. And for argument's sake, it's 10 meters. Okay. And then I'm taking another measurement from there to there. And for argument's sake, that's 20 meters. And if I already know what that measurement is, because it's a known line, it's property boundary, might have got it from a cadastre plan, might have even measured up along a fence line. Fence lines don't always correspond exactly with property boundaries, but they're a fairly good indication. I say that was 30 meters. So I could take that information and then plot that on a plan. And I'll show you how to plot that on a plan to scale in a minute.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks, Gav.
Does that make sense for folks?
Yep. And I think the plotting on the plan is the next
The next
important
part of the
step to
puzzle, isn't it?
understand how that gets from your notebook onto your plan.
Yes, exactly. All right. So let's go into a little bit of that. Okay, I'll come back to aerial plans in a bit. I think you're probably champing at the bit to understand how the heck do I draw things to scale? So I'm just going to get into that work now. All right, here we go. Bit of an exercise I'm going to get you to do, but first of all, okay, have a read of this. Okay, so working out the appropriate scale. So for example, you wish to represent a property that measures 10 meters by 40 meters on A3 paper. And A3 paper is actually 29.7 by 42 centimeters. So what scale would you use? Okay, so the first thing you would do is put both measurements in the same units. So we convert meters to centimeters like I did before, all right? So our property is 1,000 centimeters by 4,000 centimeters, and the paper is 30 centimeters abouts by 40 centimeters about. It's actually 42 centimeters. So you would then divide the property measurements by the paper measurements, okay? So 1,000 divided by 30 is 33.3, and 4,000 divided by 40 is 100. So the larger figure will be the scale. That is 1:100. That is 1 centimetre on the paper represents 100 centimetres or 1 metre dimension of the property. And this is a very easy scale to work with. It's a very common scale that we work with. Okay, does that make sense for folks? I can't see you right now because I'm sharing screen, but perhaps I can just put it in the chat. All right, great.
So there's a question here about whether the measurement function on Google Maps is accurate enough.
No, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. All right. So part 4 of this little tutorial here. So at this scale, the longer dimension of the property will take up most of the length of the paper with only a 1 centimetre margin at either end. This may be okay, but if you wanted to have a bigger margin, say 2.5 centimetres, you would have to redo the calculation with a smaller paper size of 30 by 37 centimetres. So paper size or paper space is probably a better way of saying it. You know, you need to allow on your concept plans some room to put all the text to fit your title block onto, maybe even an image or two, lists, a legend, that sort of thing. So you might have to actually make your the actual plan drawing at a bigger scale. Okay. So in this example here, part 5 of this sheet, it's got the property is 1,000 centimetres by 4,000 centimetres, and they've gone for a paper space of 30 centimetres by 37 centimetres to create the margin that they want. And when you do that division, you get 33.3 and 108. But we don't have 108 on our scale ruler. You wouldn't normally work with a scale of 1:108, but you'd choose probably 1:125 or 1:150. You then have to divide every dimension by 125 or 150 or use a scale ruler. Okay, how are we going so far with that? I think people have probably got it. So here's a little exercise for you guys to do, right? Give yourself 5 minutes to have a go at this. You wish to represent a property that measures 85 by 25 on A3 paper. What scale would you use? Have a go at that, guys, and we'll share some answers in maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So Lavina and Chloe have asked a question. I'm just going to, Lavina and Chloe, I'm just going to scroll back up here so you can see it again. You can read that again. Yeah, Daff, 1:300. I don't like it. You sometimes see it with on scale rulers, but I don't like 1:300. It does my head in. And it's not really a standard, a conventional standard standard scale. 1:250, 1:500. Okie doke. I'm going to stop sharing screen now, guys. Did we all have a bit of a go at that, or were you totally confused? Let me know, either in the chat or just shout it out. What answers did you get? Confused, confused. All right, we might go back through this again then. Okay, so the question was, actually, what was the question? I can't actually see it anymore, but I think the property was 85
by 25.
by 125?
25.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 85 metres by 25 metres. That's the size of our property. Okay. 85 by 25. And my A3 sheet is, for argument's sake, rounding to the nearest 10, 30 by 40 centimetres. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is convert metres to centimetres. I've got 85 metres by 25 metres becomes 8,500 centimetres by 2,500 centimetres. And I'm simply dividing the larger number into the larger number. So 8,500 divided by 40. Anyone got a calculator on them right now? They can work that out for me. That'd be great. And 2,500 divided by 30. I can't grab my
266 by 62.5.
So you got 266. Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Sorry. No, don't pay any attention.
Okay.
Sorry. Hang on.
Have another go.
Yep. It's around the other way. 200 by 83.3 repeating.
So 8,500 divided by 40 is
200. I got 200. That's not
a bit
right.
more. No, it's not quite right. Have another go.
My calculator told me the wrong thing. 283.
283. That sounds about right. Okay. And what's the other amount there, Morag?
Sorry,
2,500 divided by. Sorry.
83.
83.
0.3 repeating.
83.3. So, guys, we could draw up our plan at 1 is to 283 or 1 is to 83.3, but we don't have scale rulers that work in that convention. That's a convention for another universe. So what do you think would be an appropriate scale to fit that onto? Anyone want to shout that out? What would be the appropriate scale? If I was to say that the
1 is to 300?
Yeah, 1 is to 300. I was saying to Daff that it's an awkward scale. I don't really like it. It's not. Sometimes you do see it on a scale ruler, like on this scale ruler, there is a 1. There is a 1 is to 300 line along there, and we could certainly use that. I think it's a bit clunky myself. I would possibly go as to 1 is to 500.
So a few people are
Okay.
saying in the chat 1 to 250. Why wouldn't you do the 1 to 250? Why are you going the other way?
Why are you going the other way?
Explaining.
Yes, if we go to 1 is to 250, you get a bigger drawing, don't you? If you think about you're heading towards 1 is to 1. You know, you're getting smaller with that number, but it's a bigger drawing, and it simply won't fit on the page. Okay, there's a bit of a paradox. So the larger that number, the smaller the drawing becomes. You know. So yeah, if you did it 1 is to 250, you know, say you did it 1 is to 250, and this is your page. This is your A3 page that I'm representing here. You might find that your site, you can't fit your site on there. So, you know, your site property might actually go like that. You can't actually fit it on there at 1 is to 250, but at 1 is to 300, you know, it'll fit on your page. At 1 is to 300, and at 1 is to 500, it'll certainly fit on your page. Yeah, scale can be quite a confusing thing, and it's important to get your head around what scale is. All right. Does that provide people with a bit more clarity? You reckon it's what? It's 212, Greg, not 283. All right, there you go. Thanks, guys. So it should be 1 is to 212.
Sorry. Don't listen
That's
to
all
me.
right.
212.5.
Okay, 212.5, 200 or 212. So we could make that drawing 1 is to 250. All right. Good pickup, Daff and Greg. Yeah, it's important to get that right. And yes, do invest in a scale ruler. It's important for this sort of work. But yeah, that's sort of how it works. What I'll do is I'll send that little sheet to Morag, and she can send it on to you if you like. How's that sound? So you can just study it. In fact, I might be able to send that on to you now. Okay, that should be coming through to you guys now, that scale handout. Okay. So yep, get your head around scale. It's really important. All right. Yeah, you can get scale rules from drafting and art supply shops. You can These scale rulers, I don't know if you can see that, probably not. Yeah, you can order them online. You can get them from Officeworks. There's, they're not too difficult to get hold of. I think eBay as well. You can get through eBay. All right, did you get that file? Does that come through to you guys? Great. Okay, I'm going to jump back into Google Maps, Google Earth Pro, Maps, how we get aerial photography. Okay, so if we had a look at Google Maps, everyone's these days is pretty familiar with Google Maps. And here's where I live in Brisbane. And if we drill down into an area there, we can see a part of the city. All right. The thing about Google Maps is if you go to print with Google Maps, I think you can print. Yeah, if I go to print Google Maps and I take a print of that particular aerial photo, it's not actually printing it to any scale, any known scale. Okay, it's not printing it to 1:100, or 1:200, or even 1:283. We don't really know what scale it's printing for us. So if we want to use that digital information to create a base plan, we can't really use Google Maps. It's very difficult to do that. All right. What we need is an aerial plan that's on a sheet of paper, either in the real world or in the digital world, like an A3 sheet of paper or an A1 sheet of paper, that's to a known scale. Okay. I don't know where you are in your part of the world, but there's a few different ways we can do this. So at least that's my knowledge of Google Maps. Maybe you guys know a different way to do that, but my understanding is that you cannot print a map from Google Maps to a known scale or a scale that you want. So I'm just going to show you a couple of other tools that you might be interested in. So this is a tool called Map. Map is a subscription paid for service. If you're getting into a lot of design work, I really recommend you might want to invest in Map. I'm not sure what the pricing is, but it gives you very high quality aerial photography, and you can print to scale, and you can also take measurements from Google, from Maps. Okay. A free one, if you live in Queensland, is Queensland Globe. Okay, with Queensland Globe, you can drill down on anywhere in Queensland. So, I'm going to get out of that. Oh, I've been very naughty. Okay. Obviously, I need to sign in. I didn't sign in before, but they're asking me to sign in. See if we can get away with this without me signing in. If you look at the bottom, I'll just get rid of that. Bottom left of screen, guys. You can see where my cursor is. I've just put up all the scales. And you can type in the scale you want. So say you want a property at a scale of 1:500. I can actually type that in. And now that plan is showing it at 1:500. Okay. That aerial view that we're looking at right now. And, say your property is that property right there. And I can go back to my scale and type in 1:250, for example. And that's at a scale that we know of. And then I can print that plan, A3 or to A4 or whatever size it needs to be, and print it at a known scale. And then I can start using that aerial information. Okay, so that's Queensland Globe. I imagine in every state of Australia, you've got that tool. Okay, something similar to it. All right, so that's a really handy one to have. In Tasmania, I use List Map. Okay, great, Melinda. Yeah, so yep, different places will have that information. So that's my tip for getting aerial information. You need to be able to print it at a scale. Okay, if you can't print it at a scale, it's fairly useless. Having said that, aerial data is quite useful, just from an analytical diagnostic tool. But you won't use it if you can't get it to a scale. You can't really use it to drive a plan. Okay. Hope this is all making sense to you. What else are we going to have a look at? Oh yeah, Google Earth Pro. Let's have a look at that. Is anyone using Google Earth Pro? No, all right. So has anyone used Google Earth before? Yeah, you've all used Google Earth. We'll have sort of like a pro version of it. So let's jump into Google Earth Pro. And you download this onto your computer, okay? And there it is there. I can jump out of this. One of the drawbacks of Google Earth Pro is again, you cannot you cannot print it at a scale, but you can measure with it. So there's a little measuring tool at the top of the screen here. I can get that. I can click on any point I like, and I can start measuring stuff. All right. So let's say if I wanted to drill down to my site. And I don't know, I wanted to measure the sort of approximate canopy of that tree, that vegetation from there to there. I can measure that, and it's 20.3 meters. Or I could measure from there to there. It's a bit of a strange plan, actually. It doesn't look like it's directly above. It actually looks like it's an orthogonal view. So I can fix that up. But anyway, that's Google Pro and Google Earth Pro, and it can be a useful tool as well for getting aerial information. Okay, yeah, council maps. The other source of information is your local council. Okay, so every local council is different. They'll supply a full suite of information, including aerial plans, or some of them won't. They'll also can supply you with underground services information. Some of them won't. Yeah, all the environmental overlays. Yeah, good pick up, Megan. Yeah, so check out your local council as well, and just find out what sort of digital information they can provide. You can also get cadastre property boundary information through most councils as well. Okay. All right. Oh, we're going really well. So let's come back into. So we've been through site checklists. We've been through a little bit of cadastre information and trilateration, aerial photography, how you actually decide your drawing sheet size and scale. And we've looked at Queensland Globe, Google Earth Pro, Google Maps, and Near Maps. Okay, so, and we've done a little bit on creating a title block. I might just have a bit of a chat about the drafting kit. It's what sort of kit you actually need to put drawings together. Let's just look at that. And if you were with me with the other two workshops that I've done with Morag in the whole drawing and drafting area, this will be fairly familiar to you. So obviously, you know, we've been talking a lot about scale rulers, haven't we? So make sure you get hold of a scale ruler. Can either be one of these really nice metal triangular ones, that sort of thing, or the flat type one. In terms of types of pens that you can use, I typically use like an Artline drawing pen, which is a felt tip. This is a 0.3 millimeter point tip Artline. That is one of the pens that I will use. I will also use a 0.5 Artline drawing pen, okay? But felt tip. And you can go to an art supply shop. You can order this stuff online as well. A felt tip pen. Nice to use. Different line weights with different different pens. So 0.5, 0.3. Sometimes I might even use a 0.2. So they were Artline pens. This is a Staedtler pen. Nice little light 0.2. Okay. So you can pick up those pretty readily. Pencils. I will also use a pencil. Sometimes I used to use a clutch pencil. These days I just use a pretty basic drawing pencil with a sharpener. That can be quite good just to rough out your ideas. The pencil's quite nice to use. It's quite sort of forgiving. It's not an accurate thing. You want to do your final drawings with a pencil. But yeah, I use a pencil. And then so butter paper. So this is Architect's yellow tracing paper. That's what this is, but it's no different from the butter paper or baking paper, unwaxed baking paper that you'd buy at Coles very cheaply. And you can use that as as tracing paper. And then there's graph paper as well. So graph paper is quite handy to do things very quickly with a client on the kitchen kitchen table at their place. You know, the grid lines are quite handy because you can start. You know, you can. It gives you a bit of a guide for your drawing work. Okay. There's a little bit of yellow tracing paper that I've used over some yellow Architect's paper that I've used over some tracing paper. Okay. to
There was
create
a question there too
a
about
design.
what graph paper size do you use?
I just use I just use A4.
But what about
graph.
like do you use like the millimeters or the 5mm grid size?
Yeah, this is millimeter grid that I use. But try out different ones. So this is the millimeter grid. But try, give it a go. Try out different ones. Yeah, so the bigger squares are 1 centimeter. Actually, the smaller squares are, gee, that's interesting. I thought they were millimeter, but I think they're 2 mils. Yeah, they're 2 millimeter grid. Yeah, there you go. It says at the top of the sheet. 2 millimeter squares. I never knew. I just use the stuff. I just, I guess I've used 5 millimeter square stuff in the past, but I tend to use that scale. It seems to work quite nicely for me. Yeah, and then I haven't got any here to show you, but there's just cartridge paper, A3 cartridge paper that you can use to draw up your plans with as well. Let me show you some more examples. Well, there's an example of using yellow trace, or you guys can use butter paper just to draw up some ideas. You might be using this to work up a design before you actually produce the final design. I don't know if you can see it, but that yellow trace, you can actually see it on the screen here, actually. Underneath the yellow trace, you can see there's a survey plan below that, okay? And this is a survey plan that's been produced by a professional surveyor. There's some cross sections that I've used using the butter paper. And there's another iteration of the same site, just using the yellow trace, just to try and give me some ideas what I'm going to do on this site. Okay. So that's the yellow butter paper. That's how you can sort of use it to start playing around with different designs. You can just keep on laying on more butter paper and playing around and taking that sheet off and putting another sheet back on and working up a different design again over the top of that. That sort of thing. So does that sort of help people think about how you progress to getting a design together? Just using lots of butter paper, using lots of this stuff to work up a design with. You just keep on working lots of butter paper over the top of your base plan, that sort of thing. All right.
Dee's saying, do you keep copies, records, archives? Do you sort of build it up, or do you just
yeah, Dee, it's a good question. Like, funny, today I was actually going through a lot of my stuff to show you guys. I mean, gee, I didn't really keep a lot of my old butter paper plans. I don't have a great record of them. And I think it's because you just work up so many sheets over time. You're doing lots of different projects. So I've only really kept a few, maybe some towards the end, or some that I want to show a client before I get to the final plan. I might show the client my butter paper sketches. So we're not too locked in yet. We're not too, think about presenting a final concept to a client. It can feel like the whole thing's locked in. And we don't really want to do that until we're really certain. And even with concept plans, concepts are just the beginning. The concept, the design is actually not the end mission, guys. The actual stuff you're doing on the ground is the end mission. So don't get too caught up. Like I said right at the beginning of this workshop, you can go down some really big rabbit holes of drawings, and you might not necessarily need to go the final step with fully resolved concepts and all that sort of thing. All the drawing there is to convey ideas and get the site working. Okay. and it's obvious, and it's your client that's going to be the one working it. So if they, some clients actually can't read drawings. It's a really important question to ask them. How would you like us to communicate this stuff? Yeah, so and there's some cultural stuff around drawings too. It was old white guys that invented plan drawings. Your great navigators and military men of the world of Europe. That's the lineage. That's where it all comes from. So in some cultures, like plan drawings aren't particularly useful. Oral story is actually a lot better. So there's a whole lot of stuff around there, but it's really important to ask your clients what sort of graphic product they actually want. Do they want a graphic product? Maybe they want something else, Okay. That's reminding me to talk about when do you
Jeannie's
actually
got
need...
a question. Sorry, I
Yep.
just saw her put a hand.
Yep, Jenny.
I wanted to get a LiDAR map of my property. Have you ever found a way to get hold of one of those?
Yeah, I don't use LiDAR, Jenny, because we don't really use it a lot in the urban sort of scene. Yeah. Well, I haven't used it, and my understanding is it's a bit more inaccurate to use in a really dense sort of urban situation. I might be wrong about that. Whereabouts are you, Jenny? Are you on?
Well, I'm on a 10-acre rural block.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's got far better application in the rural areas, LiDAR.
Yeah.
I know Jeff Lawton really advocates LiDAR.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
I just don't know how to get one.
I asked Jeff. Yeah, I'm not familiar. I don't get involved with LiDAR, so
Thank you.
Yeah, LiDAR is a great tool, I think, for more rural applications. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so when do you need to engage a surveyor? All right, so there's certain situations where I really recommend forget about doing all that measure up stuff, get a surveyor involved, and particularly if you've got to get building approvals through a council, that sort of thing, you probably want to engage a surveyor because you want some accuracy in your work. If you're building retaining walls, you have to get approval for a retaining wall that's more than 1 metre high in Australia. But you don't need to get approval for a retaining wall that's less than 1 metre high. Okay. Now that can make all the difference cost-wise for a client. So I really recommend getting if you're working on a steep block and it looks like you're going to be building retaining walls or terracing or that sort of thing, you want to get a surveyor involved. The other thing you probably want to get a surveyor involved in is if you've got underground services coming through your property. You really want to know where they're located because there's a whole lot of exclusion zones with underground utilities. For example, I think with sewer lines, you can't plant trees within 1.5 metres of a centre line of a sewer in Queensland. Okay. So where the sewer line runs, that might be where you place your paths. That might start to indicate how it might start influencing the design if you've got underground services. Or if you have to build something over the top of a sewer line or a water pipe or something like that, you might have to get engineering involved to actually bridge the infrastructure. And if you do that, then you definitely need to get a survey. Hopefully you won't go down those rabbit holes. But I certainly have had to do that for permaculture designs. Okay. In the urban situation. So the urban suburban blocks, there's a lot more going on, typically going on underground on some properties. Okay. Let me find you a typical example of a surveyor's plan. Okay.
Question just while you're
Yeah.
searching for that about standard figures. Are there standard figures to represent different aspects, e.g. tree paths, water, etc., and resources? That was from Denise. So I've just responded to saying there are some drawing conventions, and they're often the things that you can find in that landscape book that you mentioned. But whether you just had any plan you could pull up easily to show, oh look, yeah, this is how we draw any of those.
Yeah, I'll get it. Yeah,
Thanks.
I'll quickly do that as well before we finish up. So
Thanks.
this is a surveyor's plan. In Brisbane in 2024, for a backyard, you'll typically pay anything from $2,000 to $3,000 to get a surveyor involved. So, you know, it's serious money we're talking about here. But sometimes it's worth it. Okay, so, you know, a surveyor's come along and done a very, very detailed plan here, and it's picked up the contours, location of trees, location of structures, the property boundaries, that sort of thing. Okay. All right. And this surveyor, Mark, he actually knows a little bit about trees, so he's actually identified some of the trees on this property. Hopefully he's also picked up some of the underground services. I'm not sure if he has on this plan and coming into the property. Not showing it on that plan, but that's something you can ask a surveyor to include when they're giving you a terrain and features plan. Okay. Oh, yeah, a contour and detail survey. Okay. Really handy information if you've got the client with a budget and you really do think you need to get a plan. So this is a very steep site. If you have a look at the contours, oh, come on. Contours there, that indicates it's quite steep. So it's about a 1 in 3 grade running through that property. So a lot of terracing involved for the design of that property. So that's why we got a surveyor involved with that one. Okie doke. How are we going? Is this going well for you, or are you even more confused?
There's a couple of little questions. One from Lavina and Chloe again. How long would most clients expect to take to get their final drawing? So like as a client, or as a design consultant, how long do you normally take to deliver?
Yeah. It depends on the complexity of the project. You know, there's an old adage in business is to under promise and over deliver. So, you know, you might think it's going to take you 2 weeks to do. Always double it. You know, it's going to take you a month. Probably going to take you 6 weeks actually, because other things will come along. So it's very hard to estimate those sorts of timeframes. Yeah, but it does depend on the complexity of the project. And you know, a lot of working with clients is just managing their expectations. And it also depends on how much time you've got for the, you know, if you've got multiple projects on, you've got other things that are going on in your life, how much time. So, you know, one of the things in professional practice, I guess, is just to be able to sit down and work out how long it's going to take you to do a design. And when you're starting out, of course, it's going to take you a lot longer than, you know, experienced designer like myself. And that's why I keep coming back to this notion of trying to work out what graphic products you want to offer your client, because you can actually spend a lot of your client's money doing a whole lot of documentation work and a whole lot of time, and maybe you don't need to. Okay.
Gav, there's a question in the chat from Saranahi saying that here, hang on, I'm just trying to, I think she sent it to me instead of Aaron. So this was from above, we missed it. She was saying, real quick, going back to the scaling exercise, with the first figures of 85 by 125, we seem to get the same answer as 85 by 25. Why is that? What happened? Maybe one of us did a wrong.
Yeah, you must have done it wrong. No, you won't get the same. Well,
You can't get the same because it's just we must have typed in something different.
Yeah. So you'd be 85 by 125. Without confusing it too much, you'd be dividing 125 by 40 and 85 by 30. 85 by 25, dividing 85 by 40 and 25 by 30. Think about that.
Yeah. So, and the other question just before we go to Greg was Lavina and Chloe saying how much can you expect to charge for people for design work for an hourly rate, which is a little bit of a how long is a piece of string kind of question, I guess, in a way, because of levels of experience or qualifications. I suppose you have a degree in landscape architecture, which would make it slightly different.
And I have a degree in engineering too. So, so now we're sort of going into a little bit of professional practice stuff. It's what the market's willing to support. What's that? What's the magic number? So, like professional engineer providing the full kit, full service, they're charging $250 an hour. Okay, at least, depending on the level of experience. And their draftsperson, they might be charged out at $125 an hour or something like that. So it's a really hard one to answer. It might be just a conversation that you have to have with the client. Just a very open conversation. What's your budget? What are you willing to spend? Because everyone's different, and I'm not going to give you a rate, a magic number now, because I don't even know where you live for a start. People in urban settings typically have more money than people in rural settings, but that could be the other way around, depending on who you're working with. It's one that you're going to have to try and work out, and it just might be having an open conversation with the client around that one.
Thanks, Gav. We just go to Greg. We've got a couple of minutes left. Greg, just so we keep a quick question, then we'll wrap up. And there's one more question in the chat, I guess, I want to get to as well. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, just another consideration for surveyors. You might consider offhand that $3,000 is fairly expensive, but if the surveyor codes that as he picks up the data, it will virtually draw the plan on dump of data. So all those trees and that symbol will be replicated on the drawing as he goes on the dump. But the other advantage of a surveyor is that once you've picked up that model of the natural surface, when you overlay your design on that, you can actually calculate a balance cut to fill, which will save you a considerable amount when you're looking at importing or exporting dirt from the site. So a lot of advantages for a site survey.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And because I, work in the urban sphere, we don't actually do a lot of big earthwork. But if you're working in a rural situation and building dams or doing lots of earthworks, leveling out a pad for a structure or whatever you need to do, then Greg's absolutely right. Survey can be really handy for working out volumes and earthworks and all that sort of thing. So there's different reasons to get surveyors involved. So it's as a professional permaculture designer or landscape designer, you need to be able to make those sorts of judgments about when do we need to get someone involved. If it's a simple backyard permaculture operation where you can do a bit of bushman surveying, you know, the measure up, the trilateration, that sort of thing, and you can sort of get your way through it, and you don't need to do big earthworks, get planning approvals, get an engineer involved, you know, there's sorts of things where you'll need surveyor, then go down that route. But yeah, there's lots of good reasons to have a surveyor on the team.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And you know, I think you're absolutely right, Gav and Greg. You know, really to be able to make that call, make that judgment call about, you know, is it okay just to do a kitchen table design? Keep it simple, pace it out, do a simple concept diagram with people and walk and talk and sketch draw, or is this a design that's needing a surveyor and engineer? You know, all of that kind of digital planning, and I'm sure you'll know which one you're working on.
Yeah.
There's sort of, they're both designs, but they're in different ballparks. So the question that was in the chat was, if people wanted to ask you a question to follow up, is there a good email to contact you on? A very practical question.
Yeah, I'm just going to type that in the chat. All right.
Thank you, Gav. So what I would love to encourage you to do, and maybe Gav, you can maybe suggest a few things that people go away and try in the next day or two, based on having been here to try and land this, give it a go, do some drawings. What would you suggest those activities be?
Yeah, so just do a basic measure up, okay, of something. You know, at your place, property bound, just see if you can get the property boundary information, and then trilaterate a tree or three, or something that's on your property, a shed, something like that. Just mark that up on a piece of paper, and then translate that onto an A3 page at the right scale. Okay, so use that scale drawing exercise. Have a look at that again. Get your heads around scale, and purchase a scale ruler. Okay, get a scale ruler. You'll need that. Okay, see if you can find, just going right back to the beginning of that little recommended exercise, see if you can actually find the cadastre information. Go to QGlobe and print out your property at the scale that you want it to be printed at. You know, so 1:250 scale with the property line on it. So you can call up the property line in QGlobe, the boundary. Okay. It won't be
just
super
on that, Gav, I've actually dropped into the chat as we've been going along a number of different links for different places, somewhere in Ireland, somewhere in the UK, somewhere in different places. So if you need some help in finding your local place, just get in touch and we can help you identify that.
Yeah. So that's one of the sort of key things to understand is the site. What are the boundaries of the site?
All right, that was going to be the last question, but Lizzie's got her hand up, so go for it, Lizzie. And then no, you haven't. Okay, she's just waving at us. That's lovely.
Cool.
All right. So with that, so what we've got do a basic measure up of a space, any space. If you don't have your own space, you could do a verge garden, you could do a school garden, you could do wherever it is. Just pick somewhere simple you can get to, and you can do a measure up, trilaterate a tree. Sorry, I think my autocorrect trilateral a tree. Trilaterate a tree or a shed, mark it up on your A3 paper. So get used to the scale, play with the scale, share it on Hive, share your questions on Hive too, so that we can play with that a bit more. Get get a scale rule, play with that, see if you can find your maps at a scale of 1 to 250. I will share this recording and I'll share the notes. So even if you don't need to watch through the recording, the chat will be saved. It doesn't seem to be savable from here right now, so don't worry. I will share that with you. Oh no, you can. If you go to the chat and click on the 3 dots, it says save chat. You should be able to save the chat. Can you see how to do that? If you have a go at doing that. If you can't, don't worry, because I'm saving it and I will share it with you tomorrow when the recording comes through. So you'll be able to find all the links to all those things there. All right. I know it's probably pretty late for you, Jeannie, over in New Zealand. 10 o'clock for you, I think. I'm not sure what time it is for you, Blair, in Japan. What are you? You must be getting pretty late too, I think. But anyway, I really want to thank, only 7. That's right. You're behind us. That's fine. Thanks so much, Gav. As you can see, there is a lot that you can do with drawing. And what I would really recommend is, if you are just beginning, keep it simple. If you are already sort of somewhere along the way or advanced, like, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible and keep seeing where you can take it. I would love to get more of your questions of what you're getting stuck on. Like, don't be shy. Like, if you're really getting stuck on something and it's just holding you back, think, I can't do this because I don't know how to do it. That's someone else is probably also getting stuck on that. So ask. And we can do that. I was thinking, oh my gosh, it would be so great to have like just a drawing weekend here, but you all live in far-flung places, so that's probably not that useful. But it'd be so much fun just to get out all the color pens and maps and things and just scale rules and just map out stuff all the way. But anyway, thank you, Gav. It's been such a pleasure to have these 3 sessions with you. I think it's just so useful to really look at that. I will also be gathering up all the series of 3 and putting them together as a series that you can access. I'll link it into the course. I'll link it into Hive as a little playlist of drawing classes from Gav. So you'll be able to find them all super easily. All right. Thank you, Gav. Lovely to see you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here and inputting all your tips and tricks and questions. And I'll see you again next time. All right. Thanks, Gav. See you later.
Bye.